Japan is a country which is located in East Asia. Japan considered as the world's richest country and highly developed with the most advanced technology. The economy of Japan is highly developed social market economy. Japan is the third largest economy in the world in terms of nominal GDP and fourth largest in terms of purchasing power parity GDP. But Japan was not always like that. Once in 1945, Japan was completely destroyed by the Allied powers in the World War II. With the surrender in the World War II, Japan occupied by the United States. US occupied Japan till 1952. In that time, Japan was completely burned. Japan's 40% industry were destroyed in the war, and in 1946 there was a risk of famine in Japan. During the occupation period, US successfully reforms the Japan's economy and social development. US government helped the Japan with subsidy and the advanced technology. In 1952, when US gone from the Japan, and there was a question that how will Japan develop itself, and Japan was lucky. The war started in a Korean peninsula, and US and UN both helped South Korea in the war, but there was a problem in arms supply and other equipment. So Japan took it as an opportunity and made the all equipment and procurement that US will need in the war. And suddenly demand goes high for the Japan's equipment. Japan supplied it to the US. Not only Korean War marked the Japan's growth, but also Japan's aggressive export trade policy made the Japan's economic growth as well. That leads to the unprecedented expansion of the industrial production and the development of an enormous domestic market. And even government of Japan spent more money. They lowered the interest rate, so banks in Japan give a loan in a low interest rate, and by that many businesses and people took a loan, and it leads to the high finance. Most of the finance by the Japanese bank goes to the electronics, machinery and automobile sector. Around 60% of the finance goes to this sector. Even they introduced the bullet train before the 1964 Olympic. By 1952 to 1960s, Japan annual growth rate was around 10%, and later Japan's annual growth rate increased by 13% as well. By that, Japan surpassed West Germany, France and Soviet Union and became the second largest economy in the world. People's lifestyle and standard of living has changed as well. Tokyo became the most populous, wealthy and expensive city in the world. Japan's product was highly qualitative and cheaper than US and West European countries' products. So Japan was able to compete itself in the global market. And some experts believed that by the end of the 20th century and the start of the 21st century, Japan will surpass the United States and will become the largest economic superpower of the world. And Japan's post-war growth also labeled as the Japan's economic miracle. But soon Japan's growth ended because the Japanese asset price bubble that ended the Japanese economic growth. And even today, Japan hasn't recovered yet. In 1985, US, France, UK, Germany and Japan signed the Plaza Accord. In that, they decided to depreciate the US dollar, and that leads to the Japanese yen strengthen against the dollar, and the export to the states became the costlier. So, in the fear of the recession, government of Japan spends more money. So, the Bank of Japan decreases the interest rate from 5% to 3%. This leads to the business, and people took more loan and more money from the bank, and people invested that money in the stock market and real estate market. That's lead to the acceleration of the in the stock market, and the price of the real estate also growing. Japan's land price rised at a new level. In Tokyo residential area recorded the increase of 45%, while average land price in commercial area jumped to the 122%, and in industrial side that jumped about 14%. In Osaka, land price rose at 33.5% compared to the previous year. Japan's economy recovered and entered into the year of expansion. Everything was going perfect, but Bank of Japan realizes that they made a horrible mistake, and they concerned over the asset inflation and signaled the tightening the monetary policy. In 1988, asset price in Tokyo began to stagnate, but in other areas price was still rose. So the Bank of Japan hiked the interest rate to 4.5%. That leads to the crash of the land prices in Tokyo. In other areas, land prices began to stagnate. Bank of Japan continued to hike a rate from 4% to 6%. This weakens the Japanese yen against the dollar. Because of that, asset price declined 1.7% from the peak. By 1992, asset price in the six major cities dropped to the 15.5% from the peak. The entire asset price crisis far worse in especially large area of Tokyo. Tens of trillions of dollars was wiped out with the combined collapse of the Tokyo stock and real estate market. In 2007, it began to rise again but began to fall because of 2008 global crisis. Asset price crisis affects the household consumption and investment within Japan. The asset price bubble badly affected the consumer confidence. In this, Japan lost a decade of its growth. Now, the economy of Japan is stagnated. In 1985, Japanese economy was a $5 trillion and in 2023, it's still a $5 trillion. That's not only the case. Japan's population is sharply declining. The workforce of Japan continue to decline. Youth population of Japan is also declining too. As per the estimate in 2023, Japan's economic growth is 1.5% and in 2024 it will be the minus 0.9%. So future for Japan will be so difficult. Now they got the competition from the other East Asian countries like Taiwan, China and South Korea too. So what will happen to Japan? Will Japan recover from it, and once again will Japan get its growth path again? Well, the answer is quite tough and quite challenging, but the future is uncertain. Maybe possible that Japan will recover itself and Japan gets its old pace back, but that is so difficult. So that's the economy of the Japan. I hope guys you like it, and please subscribe the channel and share the video, and thank you for giving me your precious time.